October 2025. The quiet hum of a Malaga morning was broken by a single, deliberate knock at the door of a sunlit villa. Inside, Andrew Doran, a 41-year-old man from Kirkby, Merseyside, faced the moment he had spent years trying to avoid. For nearly a decade, he had built a comfortable life under the Spanish sun, blending in, unnoticed, as another British face on the Costa del Sol. But beneath that calm surface, Doran was carrying the weight of a secret. To the National Crime Agency, he wasn't a harmless expatriate. He was a fugitive, accused of importing massive quantities of cocaine into the UK and conspiring in a kidnap plot tied to one of Britain's largest drug networks. His capture didn't come through violence or chance. It came from a digital footprint, a bank account quietly betraying his location. That single discovery would unravel an $8 million criminal empire and expose the network operating behind Britain's cocaine trade. October 2025. A calm morning in southern Spain turned into the end of a long escape. Andrew Doran, a 41-year-old from Kirkby, Merseyside, had been living quietly in Malaga for years, surrounded by sunshine and anonymity. To most, he was just another Brit abroad, enjoying the easy life of the Costa del Sol. But behind that facade was a man accused of serious crimes, drug trafficking and conspiracy to kidnap, at the center of one of Britain's largest ongoing narcotics investigations. The National Crime Agency had been tracking him for months, tracing digital footprints that refused to disappear. What exposed him wasn't a mistake made on the streets, but something far simpler, a bank account quietly revealing his location. That one discovery led to a coordinated operation involving Spanish and British authorities. By the time officers moved in, Doran's freedom had already ended. His arrest would soon uncover a network worth over $8 million, linking him to fugitives still on the run. Andrew Doran's story begins far from the beaches of Malaga, in the working-class town of Kirkby, Merseyside. Once a proud industrial hub, Kirkby has long carried a shadowed reputation for organized crime. Like many others who grew up amid limited opportunities and visible street economies, Doran's early years reflected that tension between survival and ambition. Small-time dealing, petty violence, and quick money often marked the first steps for those who later became players in the larger trade. Doran followed that pattern, gradually building connections within Merseyside's extensive criminal web. By the late 2000s, Merseyside had evolved into one of Britain's most active drug corridors. Cocaine from South America and Spain moved through Liverpool docks and local distribution routes into northern England. These operations required coordination, trusted middlemen who could manage both logistics and loyalty. Doran's name began circulating among those who facilitated shipments, acting as a discreet link between local suppliers and regional distributors. He was no street dealer. His role leaned toward organization, communication, and control. As profits rose, so did ambition. Doran shifted from managing portions of supply to helping coordinate larger consignments. Police records later connected him to operations valued at over $8 million, involving hundreds of kilograms of cocaine. This wasn't freelance work. It was part of a structured network run by figures like Thomas Michael Dunwoody and Paul Anthony Elsley, two experienced traffickers known for keeping business insulated behind layers of intermediaries. Merseyside's influence extended across county lines, reaching northern markets where demand was steady and enforcement thin. These regions relied on established transport routes, often concealed in legitimate cargo, commercial vehicles, or personal luggage. Within that system, Doran's reputation was practical rather than flamboyant. He stayed out of the spotlight, maintaining enough distance to avoid immediate suspicion while ensuring deals continued smoothly. But as law enforcement pressure increased, the network began to fracture. Major arrests, intercepted calls, and seized shipments exposed the scale of their operation. Facing growing risk, Doran disappeared. By the time authorities closed in, he had already relocated to Malaga, blending in with a British expatriate community where fugitives often vanished among the retired and the reckless alike. To those who saw him, he was simply another quiet man abroad. To the National Crime Agency, he was the missing link in one of the UK's most profitable cocaine conspiracies. For more than half a decade, Andrew Doran lived quietly under the Spanish sun, thousands of miles from the streets of Kirkby that once defined his life. Malaga, with its crowded beachfronts, cheap rentals, and steady flow of British tourists, offered the perfect cover for someone who didn't want to be found. Among the countless expats who came seeking a fresh start, Doran simply became another face in the crowd. One more Englishman who preferred the warmth of the Costa del Sol to the cold scrutiny of Merseyside. Southern Spain has long been more than a holiday destination. For decades, it has served as an unofficial refuge for British fugitives. The combination of lax residency controls, transient populations, and English-speaking enclaves made it easy for criminals to disappear. Many arrived with money, often untraceable, and invested in small bars, rentals, or construction businesses as fronts. Doran fit this pattern, maintaining a low public profile while quietly managing his finances through accounts that remained active back in the UK. Authorities believe that this network of expatriate hideouts functions as an informal protection system. In areas like Fuengirola, Marbella, and Benalmádena, criminals on the run could rely on familiar faces, contacts who wouldn't ask questions, landlords who dealt in cash, and communities that turned a blind eye to those living under assumed identities. Doran used these conditions to his advantage. By avoiding attention and blending into the ordinary rhythms of expat life, he managed to evade capture for years, despite being on an active National Crime Agency watch list. But the very thing that protected him also became his undoing. British law enforcement had strengthened cooperation with Spanish authorities under joint intelligence operations, sharing financial and residency data to trace fugitives who relied on digital banking. When Doran accessed his UK account, it triggered a lead that would end his years of hiding. His capture in July 2025 exposed not only his own movements, but also the deeper network of British traffickers who had treated southern Spain as a second home. To investigators, Malaga was no longer just a coastal escape. It was the silent extension of the UK's criminal economy, and Doran's arrest proved that even under the Mediterranean sun, the past had a way of catching up. When Andrew Doran fled to Spain, he believed distance would protect him. For years it did, but the world he left behind had changed. Law enforcement no longer relied solely on physical surveillance or street informants. It had evolved into a new form of policing, intelligence-led and digitally driven, where data could uncover what fugitives tried hardest to hide. The National Crime Agency, NCA, had long kept Doran's name on its list of wanted fugitives. His suspected role in a conspiracy involving Class A drugs and kidnapping made him a priority target. But traditional leads had gone cold. No verified address, no traceable phone records, no known aliases. The turning point came from an unexpected place: a bank intelligence officer working within the UK's financial monitoring network. While reviewing routine transactions, the officer noticed an active account linked to Doran, a small but crucial mistake for a man living under the radar. The flagged activity was discreet but revealing. It showed that despite years abroad, Doran still depended on his UK bank to manage funds. Once the alert reached the NCA's fugitive unit, analysts began tracing the origin of those transactions. They cross-referenced digital identifiers, IP addresses, device logins, and ATM withdrawals, with regional data shared under Europol's joint investigation framework. The coordinates pointed unmistakably toward Malaga, southern Spain. With that lead, the NCA contacted Spain's Policía Nacional, initiating a joint surveillance and verification phase. Spanish officers discreetly confirmed his residence, while NCA intelligence units validated the identity. In July 2025, an operational team moved in, capturing Doran without resistance. His arrest marked not just the end of a personal escape, but the success of a modern policing model that blends financial intelligence, digital tracking, and cross-border cooperation. The case demonstrated how intelligence-led policing had transformed the fight against organized crime. Instead of relying solely on reactive investigations, agencies now use predictive and data-driven strategies. Every transaction, online login, or passport record becomes potential evidence, digital breadcrumbs that can expose even the most careful fugitives. For Doran, it was ironic. Years of calculated evasion were undone not by betrayal or informants, but by the quiet precision of a system designed to see what others miss. His capture was publicly announced through the NCA's Fugitive Appeal Program, highlighting how digital coordination between nations could succeed where traditional manhunts had failed. By the time he was extradited to the UK in October, Doran had become more than just another criminal in custody. He was proof that in today's connected world, no fugitive can ever truly disappear, because every system they once relied on eventually becomes part of their trail. After years of evasion, Andrew Doran's freedom ended on July 8, 2025, when Spanish authorities, acting on intelligence from the National Crime Agency, NCA, detained him in Malaga. For the NCA, this wasn't just another arrest. It was the conclusion of a long multi-jurisdictional operation involving months of cooperation between British and Spanish law enforcement. But for Doran, it marked the beginning of a process far more difficult than capture itself: extradition. Extradition is the formal procedure by which one country hands over a suspect or convicted individual to another nation for prosecution or punishment. In Doran's case, it was managed by the UK's National Extradition Unit, a division that specialises in securing fugitives from overseas jurisdictions. Working through European judicial channels, the process required Spanish courts to review the UK's evidence and confirm that the charges met legal thresholds under both countries' laws. After several weeks of paperwork, hearings, and identity verification, Spanish authorities approved Doran's extradition. On October 1st, he was flown back to the United Kingdom under police escort, a controlled transfer designed to prevent flight or interference. Just 2 days later, on October 3rd, Doran appeared before Newcastle Magistrates Court, facing charges that placed him at the heart of a high-value narcotics and kidnapping conspiracy. Legally, the accusation of conspiracy to import and supply Class A drugs represents one of the most serious offences under UK law. Class A includes substances such as cocaine, heroin, and ecstasy, drugs considered to have the highest potential for harm and addiction. A conspiracy charge means prosecutors believe Doran wasn't acting alone, but as part of a coordinated network responsible for trafficking and distribution. The kidnap conspiracy element added another layer, suggesting criminal enforcement methods used to maintain control or recover debts within the organization. At the time of his hearing, Doran stood accused of helping facilitate the importation of significant cocaine consignments into Britain, part of an operation valued at roughly $8 million and linked to 325 kilograms of cocaine moved across northern England. His extradition and formal charge symbolized more than a personal downfall. It reflected the reach of modern justice systems. In a globalized world where criminals cross borders with ease, law enforcement now matches that movement step for step. For Andrew Doran, the illusion of safety that had protected him for years in Spain had finally collapsed under the weight of international cooperation and digital precision. Andrew Doran's arrest was not an isolated victory. It was a breakthrough in a much larger and more complex operation that stretched across northern England and beyond. At the heart of this web were two figures who had managed to vanish years earlier: Thomas Michael Dunwoody, aged 56, and Paul Anthony Elsley, aged 57. Both men were wanted in connection with a series of major cocaine shipments that formed part of an $8 million criminal enterprise, moving hundreds of kilograms of narcotics across the country. The National Crime Agency, NCA, working alongside the Northeast Regional Organised Crime Unit, NERO-CU, had been investigating this network since 2022. Intelligence reports described it as a tightly controlled operation that specialized in importing high-purity cocaine from continental Europe, processing it through a network of distributors, and collecting profits through an intricate web of bank accounts and cash couriers. For years, the operation remained partially hidden, fragmented between logistics teams, safe houses, and intermediaries who rarely met face to face. The scale was staggering. Authorities linked the network to 325 kilograms of cocaine, distributed primarily across Newcastle, Sunderland and Teesside. The drugs, valued at more than £8 million, represented one of the most profitable flows of Class A substances ever uncovered in the region. Each delivery was handled with military precision, often transported under legitimate cover loads and concealed within commercial freight moving through UK ports. Dunwoody and Elsley, both originally from Northern England, were seen as senior coordinators within this network. Dunwoody was known for his logistical planning, organising shipments, negotiating with continental suppliers, and ensuring financial cover through a chain of low-profile accounts. Elsley operated more as an enforcer and liaison, ensuring discipline and continuity within the group. When the first major investigation began closing in during 2022, both men disappeared, leaving behind few traces beyond false identities and abandoned properties. Doran's capture in Spain reignited the investigation. His movements, contacts, and communications offered valuable leads about how the larger organization had operated after the two senior figures went missing. Through phone data, encrypted messaging records, and recovered financial transfers, investigators began to uncover links between Doran's activities and the earlier $8 million cocaine chain. It suggested not just participation, but direct collaboration with the same figures who had escaped capture years before. By 2025, the NCA and Nero Q had reframed their pursuit from isolated arrests to a comprehensive dismantling of the entire infrastructure behind the network. Doran's extradition gave them both intelligence and credibility, a signal that fugitives, no matter how long they hid or how far they ran, were still within reach. For British law enforcement, the operation's significance extended far beyond drugs. It was a message that organised crime, once deeply entrenched in the north, was now being systematically exposed and dismantled. Amidst all the technology, intelligence systems, and cross-border coordination, it was a single human decision that ultimately exposed Andrew Doran's hiding place. The National Crime Agency's hunt for him had gone quiet for months. No verified sightings, no traceable communications, no active bank cards. Yet somewhere in a banking office in Britain, one intelligence officer noticed something unusual. An account that should have been dormant suddenly showed signs of activity. That moment of alertness changed the entire direction of the investigation. The officer's report didn't come from an algorithm or an automated flag. It came from experience, intuition, and a sense of responsibility. They recognized that even the smallest irregularity in financial behavior could uncover someone who had slipped beyond the system's reach. When that information reached the NCA, analysts cross-referenced it with existing fugitive profiles. The match came back clear. Andrew Doran, wanted for conspiracy to import Class A drugs and kidnap, was living freely in Spain. This was the lead investigators had been waiting for. It wasn't advanced surveillance or a digital breach that found him. It was human vigilance. Within days, authorities confirmed his location in Malaga and coordinated his capture with Spanish law enforcement. In an era dominated by automated monitoring and digital intelligence, Doran's arrest served as a reminder that human attention still matters. Technology may track data, but it cannot replace the instinct of a trained mind that notices what others overlook. That single observation, buried in thousands of routine checks, became the spark that dismantled a fugitive's illusion of safety and reignited a cross-border case that had nearly gone cold. Andrew Doran's arrest in Malaga was not the result of a single agency's success, but the outcome of a coordinated international effort. Modern law enforcement no longer functions within national borders. In complex cases like this, where fugitives exploit overseas safe havens, success depends on a network of shared intelligence, legal cooperation, and real-time communication between countries. At the center of this web is the National Crime Agency, NCA, the UK's lead body for tackling serious and organised crime. Its role extends far beyond British soil. Through international liaison officers, the NCA works directly with foreign police forces, including Spain's Policía Nacional, Europol, and Interpol. These officers bridge the gap between legal systems, ensuring that intelligence flows quickly and securely. When Doran was located in Malaga, Spanish authorities did not act in isolation. They followed a request from the NCA, supported by evidence gathered through joint operations and verified intelligence exchanges. This cooperation is grounded in modern extradition treaties, legal frameworks that allow suspects to be transferred from one country to another to face trial. Between the UK and Spain, these processes are streamlined through the European Convention on Extradition, a system that speeds up handovers for serious offences like drug trafficking and kidnapping. Once Doran's identity and offences were confirmed, the NCA's National Extradition Unit coordinated the paperwork, the legal authorizations, and the secure transfer that brought him back to Britain on October 1st. Intelligence sharing is equally critical. Agencies across Europe now use encrypted communication channels, shared databases, and specialized task forces to monitor organized crime groups operating across borders. Financial patterns, travel data, and communications can be analyzed collectively, giving investigators a broader view of how these networks function. In Doran's case, this structure worked as intended. A small clue detected in a British bank triggered alerts in multiple agencies, leading to a Spanish arrest and a British prosecution. It illustrates how modern law enforcement has evolved into a global partnership, where information, not geography, defines jurisdiction. Doran's capture was a demonstration of that reach, proof that in today's interconnected world, hiding abroad no longer guarantees escape from justice. While Andrew Doran now faces justice, two key figures connected to the same criminal network remain missing: Thomas Michael Dunwoody, aged 56, and Paul Anthony Elsley, aged 57. Both men were named by the National Crime Agency as central players in an $8 million cocaine operation that moved over 325 kilos of Class A drugs across northern England. Their disappearance in 2022 left investigators chasing shadows, forcing law enforcement to consider the difficult reality of tracking fugitives who know how to vanish. When high-level traffickers go on the run, they rarely disappear by accident. They have money, contacts, and an understanding of how police investigations unfold. Dunwoody and Elsley were experienced operators, men accustomed to coded communication, false identities, and offshore connections. By the time arrest warrants were issued, they were already gone. Their absence suggests planning, not panic. Authorities believe they may have relied on the same cross-border smuggling routes once used to move narcotics, using those networks in reverse to secure their escape. For the NCA and the Northeast Regional Organized Crime Unit, the manhunt continues quietly but relentlessly. International partners are watching for travel movements, financial activity, or any trace of digital presence that could betray their location. But long-term fugitives adapt quickly. Many cut off communication entirely, rely on intermediaries for money, and hide in countries with limited extradition agreements. It's a method that buys time, but rarely lasts forever. Their continued absence raises a broader question. How long can fugitives truly remain hidden in a world where every transaction, border crossing, and online signal leaves a trace? For law enforcement, Dunwoody and Elsley are more than missing names. They are unfinished business. And as Doran's capture proved, even the smallest oversight can collapse years of careful concealment. The walls close slowly, but they do close. When Andrew Doran was finally extradited to Britain, the National Crime Agency made its message unmistakably clear. This was not the end, it was a warning. Speaking after the arrest, NCA Branch Commander Martin Clark stated firmly, "Doran thought living abroad would protect him, but he was wrong. We will never stop pursuing those involved in serious and organized crime, no matter where they hide." That declaration reflected more than confidence. It revealed how law enforcement has adapted to a world where borders no longer provide cover. Today's investigations are powered by data sharing, coordinated surveillance, and intelligence networks that link agencies across continents. A suspect may change countries, names, or currencies, but information now moves faster than people. The Doran case demonstrated that shift in real time. What once might have taken years to track, a fugitive rebuilding a life overseas, was dismantled through cooperation between British and Spanish authorities, supported by international liaison officers and digital intelligence systems. Every transaction, every online trace, every bureaucratic interaction became a potential lead. For the NCA, Doran's capture was not just about one man, it was proof that the agency's long-term strategy works. Serious crime groups rely on fear, secrecy, and mobility to survive. But those defenses weaken under constant global monitoring. As Clark emphasized, the message is simple. You can run, but you can't stay hidden forever. The words carried weight across the underworld. Doran's arrest and the ongoing pursuit of his associates Dunwoody and Elsley signaled that the era of untouchable fugitives is ending. Law enforcement is no longer chasing shadows, it's mapping them. And for those still on the run, the silence between footsteps isn't safety anymore. It's the sound of someone closing in.